Prices are up, and Americans are not happy about that. According to a recent poll, 76% of voters view the economy negatively, but according to CNN, actually things feel worse than they are, calling this a wind chill economy. Well, wind chill makes sense because I think we can all agree 2025 blows. Now, people...
Yeah, Stephen Colbert, the Democrat Party, CBS, keeping it classy over there. So many ways to go with that one, but I'll try to leave it alone in the interest of good tastes. I thought the Democrats fixed the weather around the same time that they fixed health care. Yes, the Democrats. Yeah, it's wind chill. And what is it that CNN is reporting that people think that the economy is worse than it is? That's because the economy is pretty good, and the Democrats have been lying about it since President Trump came back into office. And they have secured information dominance like an invading army from a communist country. And they're out there, oh, yeah, everything's terrible. Gas prices are, well, they're now below $3. It's $2.90 and $2.80 something a gallon for gasoline. More than $5 a gallon, if I remember correctly, when Joe Biden was president of the United States. No problem there. Inflation got up to 9.1% under Joe Biden. We're now... just barely 3%, just barely 3%. I think it's 3.01% inflation in the United States. That's much better. The stock market has shattered all records, so retirement funds, 401ks, all that kind of stuff, booming. That's good stuff. But if you watch CNN, you just get the nattering nabobs of negativity because they're miserable. And as you know, misery loves company, and they just want everyone else to be miserable with them. They're naturally unhappy. In fact, the great old saying, I think it was the Romans, I think it might have been Julius Caesar, who said that they're not happy unless they're not happy. They just they love to be unhappy. That's who they are. That is, why they're smoking a lot of dope. Smoking a lot of dope are these guys. Because they figure that, hey, that'll make me happy. I'll be happier, because the pot's so good that, what the heck. In fact, the Wall Street Journal, with a kind of a fun story today, potheads head for the emergency room. 2 new studies show that the ill effects of THC are increasing. I would say I'm not sure if it's the effects of THC. I think it's the concentration of THC in the new, I almost said DNC, but THC, DNC, what's the difference? The pot that we make and sell and smoke now is very highly concentrated when it comes to tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in the marijuana, THC, and because when, if you smoke pot in the 1970s, is like 1% to 3% THC. Now it's like 48% THC, and unless you get the really potent stuff, when it's about 60-something percent THC on the leafy, flowery buds, So here's some surprising political news, the Wall Street Journal reports. They love their colons, too. A referendum campaign is gaining support in Massachusetts, of all places, Gesundheit, to reverse the state's 2016 legalization of recreational marijuana. Not coincidentally, 2 new studies, these new reports, report a surge in young pot users showing up at hospital emergency rooms. Pourquoi, as they say in France? Doctors at Mass General Brigham, the Mass General Brigham Hospital, found that the share of adolescents with psychiatric emergencies who tested positive for THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, increases, nearly fivefold. Now, the reason is not because they're smoking 5 joints instead of 1 joint. The reason is that the pot that they're smoking is much, 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 much more potent than the pot that, your father, your older brother smoked. So pretty amazing stuff, I've got to say. And the Democrats, they say, hey, man, you're my constitutional right to smoke really potent pot, man. And look, and here's the reality. I know plenty of people that smoke pot. I know tons of people that smoke pot. Lots and lots of people. People all over the place smoke pot. There are people, and it's like, I live in a building in Washington, D.C., and I live in Washington, D.C., and you smell pot every day on the sidewalk, when you're driving in your car. The people, well, it was just a couple of days ago, the people driving in front of me were smoking so much that it was billowing out of their car, and I could smell it. I was like, 4 car lengths behind them, and I was like, where's that come? Just looking around. Where's that come from? And I see plumes of smoke coming up from the car, several car lengths in front of me, and I zipped up to take a look at them and stuff. But this is an interesting one. Young people with mental illness challenges are more vulnerable to the negative effects of cannabis use, which can catalyze, or worsen psychiatric symptoms. Author Cheryl Yun-Shi Fu. I'm not making that up. Author Cheryl Yun-Shi Fu writes, she adds that the legalization of the drug can lead to greater accessibility, social acceptability, and advertising, she said. That increases use among young people. Sure, surprise, surprise. The last point is common sense. Legalization removes a stigma from marijuana use, as well as increasing its availability. Meantime, new study from the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, finds that the surge in young adults nationwide showing up at hospital emergency rooms with cannabinoid, hypermesia. That's right, hyperemesia. And it's a syndrome, of course, CHS. We have to abbreviate everything. Cannabinoid hypermensis syndrome, CHS. So we got that. This is, I like this. I like this description when I saw it this morning. This is cyclical vomiting, often with nausea. Would you be vomiting without nausea? And wouldn't it always be with nausea? But you got the vomiting, often with nausea or stomach pain, that is far more severe than what someone might experience after a night of binge drinking. It's a totally different thing, isn't it? It's caused by heavy marijuana use, especially in high potencies. ER visits, emergency room visits for the disorder, increasing nearly 8-fold in the spring of 2020 as COVID lockdowns took hold. That's the Democrats right there. Visits dropped. I always thought that people had more fun when pot was illegal. It's got to take a lot of the fun out of it, to be able to go to a store and buy pot. It's not even illegal anymore. What's the point? So pretty amazing stuff. But they say that the incidents just in 2020, because of the lockdowns, COVID lockdowns took hold, and these hospital visits because you smoked too much pot increased 8-fold. Isn't that amazing? Visits dropped some in 2022, but remained about 5 times higher today than the numbers that existed before the Wuhan Red Death pandemic. The U.S. Northeast and the West experienced the biggest spikes, highest concentration of Democrats. Perhaps not surprisingly, since most states in those regions have legalized marijuana, and they also imposed strict lockdowns. They're different. They're not normal, right? California, New York, and other progressive states allowed pot dispensaries to stay open during the lockdown by deeming them essential businesses. They're essential businesses. Come on, just because we're on the Wuhan lockdown doesn't mean you can't get good and stoned all day. So instead of working, young people got high at home. Well, that's better than driving around, I guess, but isn't that great? Study notes that better awareness among physicians of the disorder may contribute to the increase in ER diagnoses. An earlier study found that patients with the syndrome visited the ER on average, listen to this, 18 times before getting diagnosed, costing on average, listen now, $76,920 per patient. I assume, illegal aliens and everybody on the public dole, Somalis on the public dole and all that. They mostly chew chat, that hallucinogenic stick that they get there. But isn't that amazing? Maybe someone can investigate how much Medicaid is spending on treating pothead maladies. Fun story. An accompanying commentary in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, says that stopping marijuana use is the cornerstone of preventing the syndrome, but abrupt discontinuation may lead to withdrawal and high rates of relapse. Really? You're so addicted to pot that if you stop smoking pot that you're having withdrawal symptoms? Okay. All right. I see. That's it. Legalization proponents downplay marijuana's negative effects and addictive potential. But daily marijuana use is more common than daily alcohol use. I couldn't believe that line. Come on, I thought everybody used alcohol every day. But no, it turns out people smoking pot every day is more common in America than people drinking alcohol every day. Wow. I wonder how the Irish come out in that. According to a Carnegie Mellon University analysis last year of national survey data, they found that more people are smoking pot every day than are drinking alcohol every day. A group in Massachusetts last week submitted more than 74,000 signatures for a ballot referendum next November to reverse the state's legalization of the marijuana. And it says the legalization experiment here. These days, this is a counterculture cause, but it's one that may gain momentum as the ills of pothead culture, and especially from pot use among the young, become more widespread. Kind of an interesting story, I thought. I'm not shocked, but, well, the hospital thing and all that. And again, I just, where I live and places I go, it seems like everybody's smoking pot. But maybe it's just the places I go. All right, let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Brad, calling from Key West, Florida, who I think is on theme. Brad, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, thank you so much. I mean, almost every day you bring up something that I really want to comment on, and we haven't talked in a while. First thing is, I and my beautiful young fiance would be on your cruise this summer, except my passport was stolen with my Camaro in Dallas.
Dirty, stealing, thieving bastards. I know. I remember you telling me about your Camaro being stolen. That's a beautiful Camaro.
They got so much stuff. I mean, the insurance covered the car, but nothing.
Well, let's get back to the topic of the day because you have about 1 minute.
Yeah, marijuana.
Yeah,
marijuana.
Tell me.
Back in the 70s, growing up in Northbrook, my friends and I, we would be sitting on the sidewalk, passing a joint of Acapulco Gold, and we'd be laughing our brains out and having a great time. And the weed now doesn't do anything to me. Even though it's supposedly stronger, I still got a huge bag from Humboldt County, and it does nothing.
I don't understand that at all. It's Humboldt County. They've been famous for 50 years for growing potent pot.
I know. They started Sinsemilla, which means, I guess Mexican, no seeds.
Yeah, and that goes against everything that these studies have said, that the hyper-potent pot of today is much more powerful than the Acapulco Gold that you were smoking on the sidewalk in Northbrook in the 1970s, which was much less potent when it comes to THC.
I know, but it was much more fun. And it really was. Nowadays, no one's laughing. They're all just kind of stupid.
That's true. You don't see kids out smoking pot and laughing. They're just sitting there looking like they've slipped into a coma or something. Yeah. It's true. Yeah, sell less potent pot. Maybe, Brad, you can start a business selling Acapulco Gold.
or Panama Red or Jamaican. I mean, there was really good weed back then.
Thai stick.
Anyways, you brought up something that I have thought about for a long time, and that is how the states that legalized marijuana were the strictest states for lockdowns.
Democrat, right?
Right. So they wanted everyone to be smoking at home and chilling out.
And then they're surprised when people stayed home and smoked. Yeah, every day's an IQ test. All right, Brad, fun call. Sidewalk, Northbrook, 1970s, Acapulco Gold. That's fun stuff. Thank you, Brad. That's fun. You know that the all-new third-generation Eden Pure Thunderstorm air purifier is finally here, and it builds on the incredible success of the previous two generations, which already earned thousands of five-star reviews on Al Gore's amazing internet. The new Thunderstorm uses two different technologies that studies have demonstrated help to kill up to 99.9% of bacteria and viruses, removes dust and pet dander and smoke from the air, and it removes stinky stuff, smelly stuff. The Thunderstorm will get rid of any stinky smell, guaranteed. Talking about kitty litter boxes, trash cans, cigarette smoke, liberals, musty basements, no match for the Eden Pure Thunderstorm, and the smell disappears in a matter of seconds. Right now, you can save $200 American on an Eden Pure Thunderstorm 3-pack for whole home protection. Also, Christmas is coming up. Great gifts. Put one in your basement, one in your bedroom, your family room, your teenager's room, any place you like to have clean, fresh air. Just go to EdenPureDeals.com and use the discount code CHRIS3 to save $200 on 3 Thunderstorms. That's EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is CHRIS and the number 3. Yes, sir. Yeah, we got that. America. What a country. I love this place. We're at 888-630-9625. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem is testifying on Capitol Hill. Mentally ill Democrats are standing up and disrupting and being dragged out, and they're being guillotined in front of the Capitol now, which is a new practice. I think that's good. It's a new practice. We were talking about this last night on Newsmax, too, because we got this soccer game. I talked to you about this soccer game that is coming up with the World Cup. They call it the World Cup. And it's soccer, kick the ball. And in Seattle, they're hosting some of the international soccer tournaments. And they're hosting their big soccer game in Seattle during Gay Pride Month, which they just call Pride Month. And so they're having a gay pride game, a theme for the soccer game. And the teams playing are Iran and Egypt. If Iran wins, they're going to decapitate the Egyptian team and kick all their heads into the goal. I'm telling you, we've got, who is it, Rachel Maddow. Is she a man or is he a woman? I'm a little confused by that. But that Rachel Maddow dude, she, can you say she is a dude? Is she? The Democrats, they're a little difficult. They can be a challenge, can't they? But Rachel Maddow, she was on the television last night. Not on her own television show, am I right? Because she only has a show on Monday night or something. And 1 hour a week, $25 million a year, because, where do you think all that money for your cable television goes? The Democrats, they're not like normal people. Let's go to Rachel Maddow, because Maddow put out some crazy stuff, as she's inclined to do, of course, and as all the Democrats are very inclined to do. She's really something. And she went on a ridiculous show and got ridiculous headlines. Rachel Maddow regrets not pressing Kamala Harris more during interview about 107 Days memoir. Sure. The MS13 Now host says that Harris was more cutting off camera. She was more cutting when she was off camera during the September book interview. But that's not very exciting. What else did Rachel Maddow have to say? Because she's really something. And here's I don't know how this got in there, but it's right in there in the top headlines. Pussy Riot's Nadia Tolikova discusses Putin and Trump tactics on Rachel Maddow's show. She's got the jokes write themselves. So this Russian singer lady with the band that was thrown in prison in Moscow by Vladimir Putin, and the band is called Pussy Riot. I've got a big sign. Where is that sign? That was supposed to be in our office, but then we moved offices. I need to find that sign. Free Pussy Riot. That was good stuff. But that seems to work perfectly with the broader theme here. They're just nuts. They're completely nuts. Rachel Maddow has dire warnings for Trump sycophants. Quote, not too late. That's not a dire warning. They don't know what the words mean. They use the words, but they don't know what they mean. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, and she's warning Trump supporters that, I think Maddow's Hitler, isn't she? Maybe she's just Ava Braun, who's looking to commit suicide in the bunker with Hitler. Just great. So it starts at number 4. Numero cuatro, as the Democrats like to say. As Barack Obama told us, we all have to learn to speak Spanish because they're going to turn this into a non-English speaking country. The Democrats have that plan. Everyone will be showing up at the emergency room, super stoned. All right, let's go to number 4. Rachel Maddow on MS-13 last night, and it's kind of amazing. What they're really upset about is blowing up drug boats coming out of Venezuela. Very angry about that. And this was before the president or the U.S. seized a Venezuelan oil tanker loaded with oil headed to Iran in violation of international sanctions. The Democrats, they talk about international law all the time. They want to lynch U.S. military officers and civilians in the Defense Department, the War Department, like Pete Hegseth. They want to hang all those people. International law. But if you go to stop a ship illegally bringing oil to Iran, the world's number one state sponsor of terror, then the Democrats are angry with you. Here's Rachel Maddow. She is on the side of international drug cartels. She is on the side of Nicolas Maduro and Venezuela. And then she has this ridiculous stuff. They're all mental about how Trump is the king. They had this No Kings rally, right? And then they say, yeah, Trump is the king. He thinks he's the king because some idiot in Chicago came up with a theme, No Kings rally. And then they say, yeah, they just buy into whatever it is, like the glassy-eyed zombies that they are. Rachel Maddow.
I think there's basically 3 things going on here. I think one is that Trump wants to demonstrate that he is unconstrained by law, politics, or public opinion. Like he wants to. The reason there's no king's protests against Trump is not just because he calls himself a king and, looks the part, but because he is trying to create an illegal or sort of non-legal regime around himself in which he is unconstrained by any of the things that legally constrain an American president. So that's dangerous.
So that's dangerous. Now, I remember you were fine with President Obama targeting and assassinating American citizens born in the United States of America, Anwar al-Awlaki, who is a radical Islamic jihadi and a Democrat. And Barack Obama targeted him and had him assassinated as a U.S. citizen who actually has the rights of U.S. citizens, unlike Venezuelan drug traffickers, for example. But wait, Trump, we were listening to this morning before the show, Michael and I. So wait a minute. She says that Trump actually calls himself the king. Everything these people say is a lie. Just about a month ago, President Trump.
I'm not a king. I work my ass off to make our country great. That's all it is. I'm not a king at all.
There he is, proof that Donald Trump goes around calling himself the king. Right? That's the Democrat Party. They're mentally distressed. Honestly.
Not just because he calls himself a king and, looks the part.
And I like the looks the part. I didn't get to that. Looks the part. He looks the part. She thinks he looks quite majestic. She thinks he looks royal. Looks like the king, like Julius Caesar. Remember, the Democrats and President Trump's first time around in the White House, they held a play in Central Park of Julius Caesar. And the Julius Caesar character was a lookalike of Donald Trump. They dressed him up in the hair and everything to be a lookalike of Donald Trump. And then at the end, when they all stab him to death, the senators all stab him to death, Julius Caesar's fate, the Democrats all cheered, yay, murder, kill, destroy. And then they looted a drugstore on the way home. Isn't that amazing? But, he's a king. She thinks he looks majestic. If she were straight, she might want to date him because he looks so kingly, Rachel Maddow with Fred said, that he wants to have an illegal regime and be able to get away with anything and show that he's the king because he says he's the king. They pay her $25 million a year to spread this stuff. $25 million per year, 12-month period. You know what that means? That means that each paycheck would be $1 million every 2 weeks, right? Would that be right? Slightly more than. Got to pay the agent at least $1 million a year. Here's Rachel Maddow.
The other thing that's really bad about this is it looks like we might get a war. And it really looks like a regime change war to try to take their oil, which really is something we know a lot about in this country and is supposedly part of the reason that Trump arose in Republican politics, because he was against those sorts of things.
I'm sorry, a regime change war to get the oil of Venezuela. That is what MS-13, DNC, and the $25 million news anchor Rachel Maddow is peddling. That's what they're pimping. Again, this is another one of those situations where if I were the president or the press secretary, I might say NBC is a television network, but it's not a news organization. And we're not going to invite you into the White House with press passes anymore to ask questions at press conferences or press events, because you're not a legitimate news organization. The news organization, the network, doesn't get to decide. We're a news organization if, all evidence suggests otherwise. Isn't that amazing? So looks like a war, regime change war to get their oil. And we know a lot about that. And that was to imply that the George W. Bush administration invaded Iraq to get their oil, which we didn't do. And although gifting them free elections and so on, maybe we should get a little something in return, and maybe we will later on. But, the damn Arabs and the damn Muslims, what are you going to do? So we got that. And then, so she's going down her list, the litany of things. And then this one is great. Listen to this. So it's Venezuela knocking out drug boats. And he is saying that President Trump is saying Nicolas Maduro, the dictator there who stole the last presidential election, who is the overlord of an international drug cartel, who is a gangster, a criminal, $50 million reward out for him. I was thinking about getting some Delta Force friends to go get that $50 million. But here is Rachel Maddow. She's not done yet.
But the last thing, I think, is the weirdest thing to worry about, which is that Trump really doesn't seem to have any idea why he's going to war in Venezuela, nor does he seem to be in charge of any of the decisions that are leading us to this war. And so we also have to worry about who's actually running the government right now and who is actually driving us toward this regime change war that the president doesn't seem to be at the helm of. We don't know who is, and we don't know why.
That was pulled directly out of her dark and remote location on a string of threads, like dunk, 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 dunk. Here they come. Here she's pulling stuff out of her dark and remote region, and he doesn't have any idea, and we don't know who's running the country because he doesn't know anything about it. And if you get your news from MS-13 now it's called MS-13 now, then you might think that this stuff is true. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks he's the king. He wants to have an illegal regime. He wants to regime change in Venezuela to take their oil. No, we would like to restore Venezuela to the pre-socialist days. Hugo Chavez took over. He stole all of the oil infrastructure that had been built there by mostly American oil companies, also British oil companies, and lots of great infrastructure. Venezuela was the most prosperous country in all of Latin America. Anything south of San Diego, the most prosperous country was Venezuela. And then the commies came. They called themselves socialists. They said they're going to give everybody free stuff. And they started stealing everything at gunpoint because, as the Obama administration officials like to say, they agree with Mao that all political power comes from the barrel of a gun. And so the commies came in and Hugo Chavez, they stole, nationalized all of the oil infrastructure built by others because that's what they do. They can't build anything, but they can steal if they've got guns. And they've got guns.
We kind of agree with Mao that political power comes largely from the barrel of a gun.
There you go. Ron Bloom of the Obama White House, always agreeing with Mao. They had that other ridiculous woman that also said Mao was her favorite political philosopher. History's number one murderer of humanity, but never mind that. You're Democrats. You're Democrats. All right, let's see. That's wacky. Rachel Maddow. And it's really not about Rachel Maddow. It's about NBC and NBC News, the NBC News network, and paying this woman to spread insane, demented, made-up propaganda rooted in Trump derangement syndrome and nothing else. She actually did she was a Rhodes Scholar, unlike the governor of Maryland who made up all kinds of stuff about his PhD at Oxford and everything. All right, should we take a call? Let's take a phone call. Let's go to Bob, calling from wonderful Joplin, Missouri, listening on one of my favorite stations, KZRG. Bob, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, hey, just wanted to call in on that last topic regarding the hyperemesis that occurs, not hypermenses, which means heavy period. Just wanted to let you know that.
It's a heavy flow day. All right, let's move forward then.
Yes, sir. No, I'm a ER physician. I treat this a lot. It's pretty ubiquitous in really high dose THC and really heavy daily users. Kind of just a PSA for people out there. If your kid is going into the shower and is having a lot of vomiting, kind of be suspicious of that a little bit. That's kind of the key when we get histories about this, and it's really benign exam otherwise. Capsaicin cream and heat work the best. It kind of tricks the brain back into not being nauseous because THC actually does suppress nausea, but messes with the gut a little bit. So I just wanted to add that in there. It is definitely a problem with increasing THC. I mean, the caller previous about the Camaro in the 70s is absolutely true. It is changing, and it is having an increased psychotic effect for many kids. But that's a lot of background for their kind of socioeconomic problem, and it's a lot of masking, and there's a lot of issues with our reward pathways these days, and we're losing our kids, and I have a kid that's in that age group, so it's something I'm very worried about. Wow.
I'm really glad that you called in, Bob. Now you're an emergency room physician, you're a medical doctor, and you're seeing this in Joplin, Missouri.
Well, it's everywhere. It's been really prevalent. It's really the first studies came out of Colorado and some of these places that had legalization. And Missouri has a legalization policy, which, in my opinion, it's a mixed opinion, and it's not shared amongst a lot of physicians. But it does help change addicts. You can deviate them from really fatal addictions to something more benign while you're working on the psychologic aspect in the background. But for children, your prefrontal cortex is not there, and the interconnectedness of the brain is really malleable at that time. And when you're putting in a agent that induces psychosis in conjunction with social media, you have a recipe for a lot of bad outcomes.
Yeah. And you see it as a direct result of the massive increase in THC levels in the pot that's being smoked.
Yeah, and that's generally what's seen in the studies. And it's usually daily users so if the daily use was a lower THC content, of course, maybe you might not have as much prevalence. But from the research that I read, as well as that JAMA article, it is the high dose, and it's because it's kind of hijacking the nausea system in the gut-brain relationship rather than having the THC naturally suppressed in the brain. And it has a funny mechanism with the heat receptors in the body. So if you kind of hijack the heat receptors, you short out that nausea pathway.
Interesting.
And also antipsychotics work quite well.
Wow. See, I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And if your kid is vomiting in the shower, yeah, I would think that would be an area of concern, one way or the other.
It's a key piece of history that really does tie it, and then you get a urine drug screen, and they're generally positive. So it's more of a clinical connection with history and a very benign workup. And the reason workups are expensive is because when you have a presentation like that, it warrants an emergency evaluation. And so you see these relatively benign conditions come in, and you have to work them up, and that's why it is $75,000 in multiple ED visits.
Wow, Bob, great call. Thank you. That's great. I love information. Here's emergency room medical doctor Bob. I call him Dr. Bob from Joplin, Missouri. Listening on KZRG, the great KZRG. You know, the Democrats turned a 2-block area right in front of the White House into Black Lives Matter Plaza because a career criminal drug addict died of cardiac failure while resisting arrest. George Floyd, St. George, they love George Floyd. They certainly do. There is a new bill that has been introduced. Who is it? Nancy Mace. Bill would rename the former Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C. in front of the White House after activist Charlie Kirk Plaza. The Democrats will oppose that because he was on the side of America and he was Christian before he was assassinated. And he wasn't a junkie and a career criminal. He didn't die with fentanyl coursing through his system while resisting arrest after committing yet another felony in a long string of felonies. So the Democrats will be very angry about this. But, yeah, Charlie Kirk Plaza in front of the White House, a couple of blocks. We'll have to put it in the street just like they did for, George Floyd.